Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to The Inner Voice. You are tuned to 1422 medium wave. This is the new Pan-Hellenic voice. I am Dr. Gabrielides. I'll be with you till 1 o'clock. Today I'm going to carry on where I left off last week, completing the program on the seasons of our nature. So stay tuned, my friends. I had much positive feedback from last week, and I'm sure you will not want to miss this week's program. So stay tuned while I greet my fellow Greek listeners, and I'll be back with you in just a moment. Καλησπέρα σας κυρίες και κύριοι. Είσαστε συντονισμένοι στα 14-22 μεσαία κύματα της νέας Πανελλήνιας Φωνής με την εκπομπή μας Εσωτερική Φωνή. Μαζί σας ο Δ. Παναγιώτης Γαβριηλίδης μέχρι τις 1 η ώρα. Μείνετε συντονισμένοι μαζί μας και εύχομαι να αναπαύσουμε λίγο και να χαμογελάσουμε λίγο σήμερα. Okay, the seasons of our nature. Just a bit of a recap from last week, so we're all on the same page. Just as what I covered last week was basically just as nature doesn't stay forever in a single season, neither do we. Just as there are 4 seasons in nature, our inner natures also experience 4 seasons. Spring would be the season of new beginnings. Summer would be the time when we grow the fruits of our new beginnings, when we put in our major effort. In the fall or autumn is when we would harvest or reap the rewards of our efforts, including opportunities to be acknowledged and appreciated for our accomplishments. And in winter, we would rest, rediscovering our true selves. And it is interesting that without winter, we cannot move into spring again. And I went into it at length last time, explaining how that it is encouraging to be aware of this, that because it's kind of perplexing. One moment you are in your summer, putting forth great effort and energy, and then you move on into your fall or autumn where you reap the rewards for your efforts, and then suddenly you fizzle out and you think, well, wow, has something happened to me? Is something wrong with me? Am I yesterday's news? And you get depressed, and all kinds of horrible thoughts begin, and feelings and emotions begin to enter your mind and take over your being. So it is encouraging to know that, no, just like the seasons in nature, you're not coming apart, you're merely moving from one season to the next. And it is natural, and I went into it last time, how that we can use winter to recuperate, to learn more about ourselves, to become more solid, grounded, and rounded human beings, rather than despair and be discouraged and fall apart. We got as far as the point of asking the question, well, how then do we grow more authentic during the winter season of our nature? My friends, working with people has taught me a great deal about myself and other people, including how we can grow to accept ourselves and our life circumstances. Acceptance, my friends, acceptance gives us power and courage to stay steady and strong, instead of shifting the blame for what we don't like to others and losing the will to make our own choices. Often we don't understand why things happen in our lives. Often. But we don't need to always understand everything. If we consider, for example, what will I do now? Or how can I respond to this challenging scenario? Life is a difficult journey. We know that. Life is not easy. The author of the very famous and well-known book, The Road Less Traveled, began his book with that very same sentence. Life is not easy. The author's name escapes me for the moment, might come back to me in a moment. But anyway, the book Everybody knows the book. If you are interested in reading it, I really recommend it. It's called The Road Less Traveled, freely available at all the major bookstores. Uh, so life, yes, is a difficult journey. There is no way to change how our lives are put together. We know that we are born, we know that we live, and we know that we die. We know that we can't control the elements and that some of us are unhappy more than we are content. If we can't change the framework of our lives, how can we live out our years getting the most from them? One answer is by seeing our experiences as gateways to greater understanding and compassion. That's a big key, to see our experiences as gateways to greater understanding, to greater compassion. I spoke last week about the power of love, the importance of love, not mushy love, sentimental love, no, real, authentic, powerful love. You see, when we connect with our authentic selves, we learn about our courage and our grace as much as our suffering and betrayals. When we only remember the misery and the pain, we remain locked in yesterday. I don't know about you, but no one wants to remain locked in yesterday. No one wants to remain locked in tomorrow, for that matter. And many people catastrophize about tomorrow. They say, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? Futile, useless, my friends. Don't spend any of your precious energy thinking of tomorrow, regretting your yesterdays. Just live in the now. Today is enough. But the reason we feel upset by dwelling on old suffering is not what we think, my friends. It's not what we think. By refusing to find the meaning of our negative experiences, we think we're protecting ourselves from discovering how we have fallen short in the past. But the reality is that by finding the courage to look squarely, the reality is that by finding the courage to look squarely at our old pains and sorrows, we see the ways we truly are authentic, thus liberating ourselves from past suffering. For example, as we learn to detach from the criticisms of others and become our own loving parents and mentors, we're then able to see that the God force sees our value and helps us to make our own unique contributions to life, making the most important of opportunities we might otherwise have missed. I have done radio for years now. Week in, week out, I sit behind the microphone and share my thoughts with you all. Often I wonder whether I'm doing any real good. You know what I mean, my friends? But always, somehow when I begin to despair, when I begin to doubt, I'll get a wonderful message like this one I got recently. I'd like to share it with you anonymously. Dear Doctor, I pressed on my AM channel to listen to the Voice of America, and your station came up when you spoke about what anti-inflammables do to us. I suffer from osteoporosis. I used to use one daily inflammatory tablet after I hurt my knee 2 years ago, but I had so much pain I slept about 5 hours at night until I heard your speech. I have no more pain and sleep up to 8 hours. I stopped taking the tablets. Thank you so very much. I am 70 years old and I feel so much younger. May God bless you always. From the person who sent it to me. See, that's to me very heartwarming. Very heartwarming. I don't see anyone here as I'm talking. No one reacts with me. And I like it that way. I used to take calls on the air, but I don't anymore because I found that it just breaks up the continuity. I never got in what I wanted to say, and At the end, it just ended up being a hodgepodge, and no one really truly benefited from it. And you can't really give individual advice to people calling on the air anyway. The things like that need to be done properly. The people seeking advice about their health need to do it privately, and need to consult me privately, obviously, for us to do a good job, a proper job. So it's difficult for me because I don't get the immediate feedback. I get lots of feedback, after I get off the air. But anyway, it's encouraging to get positive feedback like that. So we're always tracking our truth, are we not? We're always asking vision questions, if you would, without realizing that these questions come from our inner vision keeper, if you would. Let's invent this imaginary vision keeper, who pushes us to pay attention to where we're going in life. Our answers to these vision questions help us understand what we love and where we find meaning in our lives. The vision questions we need to answer are not necessarily the ones we ask when we begin our internal dialogue. Let's listen into an imaginary conversation to illustrate. Let's call this person Julian, and let's say he works in the kitchen of a large hotel. So Julian asks, I wonder if I'm going to earn overtime tonight. What if Joe leaves early? Will I need to clean up his section too? Does anyone appreciate me for the work I'm doing here? Why am I in this job anyway? Now, at first, Julian thinks about mundane aspects of his work. His intuition lets him consider the nature of his work and what he can anticipate. Then his perception takes over, and he finds himself asking a profound question. A profound question, which is, why am I in this job anyway? You see, this is a genuine vision question for Julian. It is a purpose question. It is a question, the answer to which can change our lives. Why am I in this job anyway? You listening to me, you don't have to be working to ask that. You can ask a million other vision questions. Who am I? Why am I? Where am I going? Why do I live in the city where I live? Why do I wear the clothes that I wear? Why do I live in the type of house that I do? Why am I in the relationships that I'm in? All of those are vision questions that you can ask and answer, and they would change your life. Now, let's assume that Julian is paying attention and is struck by the significance of his question. He would consider whether his job was meaningful to him. He wouldn't consider any other sidetracks like, yes, but it pays the bills. That's important, but that's in a sense a sidetrack, because there are a million other different kinds of jobs that would also pay the bills, you see. So if you're only doing your job to pay your bills, well, that's fine, nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong, please. But 12 other jobs that you could do would also pay the bills. So why are you doing this particular job? You understand where I'm coming from, my friends? Or Julian could say, I have no college education, so this is as good a job as I can get. Or, the economy is depressed, so I'd better play it safe and just suffer in silence. Now, when we clutter our minds with all the reasons we cannot possibly be happy, successful, in taking the next step, we foil our vision keeper's efforts. We foil the purpose of asking these vision questions. We either give up, or else willpower takes over and we try to make our situation work by sheer muscle. We all know the result of such efforts, though, don't we? Generally disaster and wasted time and effort. Our authentic selves fuel our vision effortlessly, on the other hand. We show up to do our best with total confidence in the outcome because we've given the outcome to the Creator. You see, I find it useful to ask myself, am I working for the God force or am I working for myself? Where I feel the reaction inside of me tells me the truth. If, for example, I feel it in my gut, to use the vernacular, as opposed to my heart, I am probably working for myself. When I feel it in my heart, then I know I am working for the God force, for the good of, for the collective good of all mankind, you see, for my fellow human beings. And I feel better about myself. So, you feel it in your gut, you're working for yourself. You feel it in your heart, you're working for the collective good of all mankind. Now let's go back to Julian. If our dishwasher, if Julian were staying true to his vision, he might conclude that for him, the only value comes from working with the other staff members, helping them feel better about themselves. Because after all, anyone can wash the dishes. Realizing this, he might begin to understand that while his job provides a small slice of what is significant to him, he needs a larger slice of what he loves. So Julian has choices. He can decide to get some training and begin working with troubled teens, say. He'd be moving closer to a full-time experience that would give his life greater meaning than merely washing the dishes for a large hotel. You see, vision isn't guiding us to just another job. Vision is guiding us into full-time participation in the experiences that offer us the greatest meaning. Without meaning, my friends, our lives are empty. Our lives are empty without meaning. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is a very famous and well-known book. Viktor Frankl, of course, was a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. He was a prisoner of that nightmare, and he wrote this book to attempt to explain, and I think he did a great job, to attempt to explain how one can search for and find meaning in this mindless inhumanity of man to man experience we call the Holocaust. So you see, we have to find meaning in our lives. Those of you who are interested, I recommend that book. Once again, very well known, freely available at bookstores. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. See, Vision Keeper is at work in everyone's life. Vision questions are at work in everyone's life. And the Vision Keeper cares only about spreading love, encouragement, and opportunity into every open hand and open heart, not the closed ones. Everyone has a fair shot at finding his or her vision and turning it into a living presence in their lives. Everyone. Okay? We might wonder about people who are very successful financially, but seem interested only in making money no matter how they do it. Are such people being guided by their vision keepers? I've learned from experience, my friends, that we're wise not to judge anyone, least of all to judge such people, because we do not understand the bigger picture of their lives. None of us has walked a mile in anyone else's shoes, so we have no right to judge one another negatively in that respect. One thing we can know is that as we age, Vision Keeper has a distinct advantage because our minds turn naturally to the legacy we will leave our children and the world as we grow older. What kind of legacy will I leave behind? What will they put on my tombstone? Or will it just read RIP, R-I-P, R.I.P. Rest in peace. You were a pain while you were alive. All we can say on your tombstone is RIP. Some humor, my friends. We have to be able to laugh at ourselves, as I so often say. Otherwise, woe is us. Okay, so let's hope that they'll write more on our tombstone than just RIP. Rest in peace. Oh dear, we all want to leave a positive mark, don't we? All of us. Great and small and in between. Money, power, and position may matter in the short term, but they don't count when we're ready to leave the earth. Necessarily. Of course they don't count if you, of course they do count if you leave them wisely to your progeny. Of course they count. But you know what I mean. I'm talking about you now. Once they will count to those who you leave behind, but to you, they're not necessarily going to count, are they? So we need balance in life. Please, I'm not against wealth or anything like that. That's not the point of this program. If that's not my point. You've missed the point if you think that it is. I'm talking about totally other different things here. I'm talking about finding our purpose in life, balance, the whole thing. So the vision we lived is all that will comfort us. The vision that we live is all that will comfort us. Money, power, and position are not evil things. The way we use them is what makes them evil or valuable in the world. Only the way we use them. In and of themselves, they're neutral. Money, power, and position, driven by vision from an authentic heart, can change the world. Oh yeah, it can be very good. Never underestimate the power of the vision keeper to make use of every one of our passions, turning our self-serving interests into community-serving ones. Vision keeper is an equal opportunity employer. Make no mistake. Sometimes we bring our authentic, vulnerable self out into the world, my friends, like an enthusiastic puppy, only to run up against the masks of others. When this happens, we feel not only foolish, but also deeply betrayed. Sometimes, for example, we will be betrayed by someone we like and who was close to us. That's hard. It fills us with horrendous confusion and hurt that just swells inside of us, doesn't it? We're shocked, especially because we may have been totally loving and generous with this person. We can't believe this is happening to us. If they felt this way about us, why hadn't we picked up on it sooner? How could we have been so naive? Their words and actions wound us to the core. We want to be alone, too ashamed to face others sometimes. It took a lot of courage and prompting from other friends to pluck up the courage to trust again when that happens to you, doesn't it sometimes? What helps me in situations like these is to try to put myself in the other person's shoes, the one that hurt me. One such person I found out was horribly abused by their parent. They were severely beaten for years. Is it any wonder then that sometimes they lose it? So, with understanding and wisdom, we learn to tolerate and to forgive and to live and let live. You see, the truth is, we all put on our masks to protect ourselves. And while we were children, they worked. But now it's time to ask ourselves some questions. Do our masks represent who we really are, who we truly are? Or are they betraying us? What are our emotional triggers? Could the difficult people in our life be aspects of our buried self, with a capital S? Could these people provide the keys to unlock some of our unconscious masks? Are we protecting our masks? Are we projecting our masks onto the people in our life? Masks keep us from uniting with our authentic self. They prevent us from experiencing the joy, the love, the freedom that are our birthright. They also prevent us from crossing the bridge towards our dreams and the life we want. Be aware of anyone who causes you to put on a mask, my friends, and think about why you do so. The why may be a sign that it's time for you to set your mask aside and bring out your authentic core, your authentic voice. Go deep. Connect with your inner child. Do some soul work. Mourn for the person you were not allowed to be. Yeah, sometimes we need to mourn for the person we were not allowed to be, but it's not too late. Remember last week I told you about the 98-year-old lady. Just wrote her first book, busy writing her next one. Expose the unconscious masks and let go of them. Better yet, have a ceremony, bury them, and say goodbye. Okay, my friends, we are halfway. I'm going to give you my number in a minute. I do consult as a natural medicine consultant. You are tuned to 1422 medium wave. This is the new Pan-Hellenic voice. We're going to go to a brief commercial break and we'll be right back. I am Dr. Gabrielides. Those of you who do wish to consult me for various therapies using natural medicine, my number is 076 189 6690. I repeat, 076 189 6690. Θα πάμε τώρα, κυρίες και κύριοι, στο συνηθισμένο μας διαφημιστικό διάλειμμα και θα είμαστε και πάλι μαζί σε λίγα λεπτά εδώ στα 1422 μεσαία κύματα της νέας Πανελλήνιας Φωνής. Θα σας δώσω τώρα σε μια στιγμή το τηλέφωνο μου για όποιον θέλει να επικοινωνήσει μαζί μου για διάφορες θεραπείες με natural medicine. Λοιπόν, είσαστε, όπως είπα, συντονισμένοι στα 1422 μεσαία κύματα της νέας Πανελλήνιας Φωνής. Ο Δόκτωρ Παναγιώτης Γαβριλίδης μαζί σας μέχρι τις 1 η ώρα. Το τηλέφωνο μου λοιπόν είναι 076 189 6690 076 189 6690. Welcome back. You are tuned to 1422 medium wave. This is the new Pan-Hellenic voice. I am Dr. Gabrielides with our program, The Inner Voice. Stay tuned. I'll be with you till 1 o'clock. And this is the second half. We started at 12, finished off what I began last week on the seasons of our nature. Now, I'd just like to end off the second half talking about toxic shame and what we can do about it. Toxic shame. Stay with me, my friends. All right. Abraham Maslow, the pioneering psychologist, once wrote, "The spiritual life is part of the human essence. It is a defining characteristic of human nature, without which human nature is not full human nature at all." What is spirituality then? Now, when I talk about spirituality, I am not talking about religion. I am talking about our lifestyle. I believe that life is ever unfolding and growing. So, to me, spirituality is about expansion and growth. It is about love, truth, goodness, beauty, giving and caring. Spirituality to me is about wholeness, not fragmentation. It's about completion. Spirituality is our ultimate human need. It pushes us to transcend ourselves and to become grounded in the ultimate source of reality. So in the second half, I want to talk about toxic shame. Shame that is toxic. Our healthy shame, of course, is essential as the groundwork or the grounding of our spirituality, our anchor, the foundation of our spirituality, is what I'm trying to say. By signaling us of our essential limitations, our healthy shame, which we all need, lets us know that we're not God. Okay, we're still human. Our healthy shame points us in the direction of some larger meaning. It lets us know that there is something or someone greater than ourselves. Obviously, something greater than our human mind made our human mind. Our healthy shame is the psychological ground of our humility. But conversely, or in contrast, toxic shame is something entirely different and very, very destructive, my friends. But, oh, M. Scott Peck is the author that I was looking for in the first half, the author of the book The Road Less Traveled, my friends. And he describes both neurosis and character disorders as disorders of responsibility. That is an interesting way of looking at it, that both neuroses and character disorders are actually disorders of responsibility. Dr. Peck writes, and I quote, "The neurotic assumes too much responsibility, you see. On the other hand, the person with a character disorder does not assume enough responsibility. So when neurotics are in conflict with the world, they automatically assume that they are at fault. It's my fault. I'm a neurotic. See, now on the other hand, when those with character disorders are in conflict with the world, they automatically assume that the world is at fault." From his book, The Road Less Traveled, I would like to quote Dr. Peck some more. And he says, "All of us have a smattering of neurotic and character disordered personality traits." And that's true. None of us are perfect. So we all have a smattering, a little bit of everything. "The major problem in all of our lives," Dr. Speck says, "is to decide and clarify our responsibilities. To truly be committed to a life of honesty, of love, of discipline, we must be willing to commit ourselves to reality." End quote by Dr. Peck. You see, this commitment, according to Dr. Peck, requires the willingness and the capacity to suffer continual self-examination. Such an ability requires a good relationship with oneself in order to remain healthy. This is precisely what a no-shame person has. This is precisely what a no-shame-based person has. In fact, a toxically shamed person has an adversarial relationship with him or herself. Toxic shame, the shame that binds us in a sense, is the basis for neurotic and character disordered syndromes of behavior. So, what is the shame that binds you and me? This toxic shame. How did it get set up in our lives? What happens to healthy shame in the process? Okay, let's look at that. Toxic shame, that shame that binds us, is experienced as the all-pervasive, that means the all-inclusive, the ubiquitous, it is everywhere, sense that I am flawed and defective as a human being. You see, when you experience toxic shame, you think that you're flawed and defective as a human being. You're not quite complete, you see. Other people are, but not you. See, that's toxic shame. Toxic shame is no longer an emotion that signals our limits, like healthy shame should, but instead it becomes a state of being, a core identity. You become to identify with this toxic shame. You're not only now you're not a human being who has shame. No, you are shame. Very destructive. Toxic shame gives you a sense of worthlessness, a sense of failing and falling short as a human being. Toxic shame is a rupture of the self, small s, within the self, capital S, the big self, the authentic you. It is like internal bleeding. Exposure to oneself lies at the heart of toxic shame. See, a shame-based person will guard against exposing his or her inner self to others. I must not let them know. But more significantly, they will guard against exposing themselves to themselves. In other words, they hide from themselves. Such is the degree of toxic shame. Toxic shame is so excruciating because it is the painful exposure of the believed failure of self to the self. So in toxic shame, the self becomes an object that can't be trusted. One experiences oneself as untrustworthy as well as worthless. I don't know whether you can hear the thunder. But wow, it came through loud and clear. Anyway, all right. So, toxic shame is experienced as inner torment, a sickness of the soul. If I am an object that can't be trusted, then I am not in me. Toxic shame is paradoxical and self-generating. There is shame about shame, if I can put it that way. People will readily admit guilt, hurt, or fear before they will admit shame. Toxic shame is the feeling of being isolated and alone in a complete sense. A shame-based person is haunted by a sense of absence and emptiness. Any human emotion can become internalized. When internalized, an emotion stops functioning in the manner of an emotion and becomes a characterological style. In other words, it becomes your core identity. It is you. You're no longer ashamed. No, you are ashamed. Now, you probably know of someone who could be labeled, say, an angry person, or someone you'd call a melancholy person, a depressed person. Now, in both cases, the emotion has become the core of the person's character, his or her identity. The person doesn't have anger or melancholy. No, they are anger. They are melancholy. Toxic shame also likewise becomes internalized. This internalization is a gradual process and happens over a period of time. Every human being has to contend with certain aspects of this process, by the way. So, shame, for example, to clarify matters, is internalized when one is abandoned, as an example. Not the only time, please. See, abandonment is the precise term to describe how one loses one's authentic self, one's dignity, and ceases to exist psychologically. It's a very tragic thing, very tragic phenomenon, very tragic state in which to exist. Children cannot know who they are without reflective mirrors. What do I mean by that? Don't mean real mirrors, physical mirrors, no. You see, mirroring is done by one's primary caretakers, the parents, or whoever is the primary caretaker if the parents are not around, and mirroring is crucial in the first years of life. Abandonment includes the loss of mirroring. If you've been abandoned as a child, well, who are you going to have to mirror you? See, parents also who are shut down emotionally, they too, even though they may be present physically, they cannot mirror and affirm their child's emotions because they're shut down emotionally themselves. Since the earliest period of our life was pre-verbal, everything depended on emotional interaction. Without someone there to reflect our emotions, we have no way of knowing who we are. So mirroring remains important all our lives. Think of the frustrating experience which most of us have had of talking with someone who is not looking at us. While you are speaking, there may be fidgeting around or reading something. Very disconcerting. Very disconcerting. Those people don't respect you. Our identity demands a significant other whose eyes see us pretty much as we see ourselves. That is the kind of mirroring that I'm talking about. Now, when shame has been completely internalized, nothing about you is okay. Yeah, nothing about you is okay when shame has been internalized, you see? You feel flawed and inferior. You have a sense of being a failure. There's no way you can share your inner self because you're an object of contempt to yourself. Please understand that. You're an object of contempt to yourself. You see, when you're contemptible to yourself, you're no longer in you. You see, you have to live outside of you in order to see yourself as an object of contempt. To feel shame is to feel seen in an exposed and diminished way. When you're an object to yourself, you turn your eyes inward, watching and scrutinizing every minute detail of behavior. You become a super duper critical judge of yourself, which is an object in your eyes. So this internal critical observation is excruciating, my friends. It generates a never-ending, tormenting self-consciousness, which Kaufman describes as creating a binding and paralyzing effect upon the self, quote unquote. This paralyzing internal monitoring causes withdrawal, passivity, and inaction. This in turn creates a sense of unreality. One may have an all-pervasive sense of never quite belonging, of always being on the outside looking in. So the condition of inner alienation and isolation is also pervaded by a low-grade chronic depression. So if you're suffering, if you see these symptoms in your life, then the chances are good that you may be suffering from toxic shame. See? If you're suffering from a low-grade chronic depression, or if you always feel you don't belong anywhere, that you're an outsider looking in, you may be suffering from toxic shame unbeknownst to you. See, this has to do with the sadness, the chronic depression that people suffer from because of toxic shame. The low grade has to do with the sadness of losing one's authentic self. Perhaps the deepest and most devastating aspect of neurotic shame is the rejection of self, of the self, by the self. Primitive tribes have some very unusual but very effective ways of punishing thieves. The Eskimos, for example, the Inuit, as they like to be called, we call them Eskimos, they like to be called Inuit. If they catch someone stealing, they will laugh at them every time they see them. Oh, that is so horrible. Imagine, whenever anyone sees you, to laugh at you. That is so traumatic to the human psyche that there's very little thievery going on in Eskimo land, believe me. And all the primitive peoples have similar punishments. The pygmies, the worst punishment the pygmies can inflict on their fellows is to pretend they're invisible, that the culprit is invisible. Actually, pygmies have been known to commit suicide when they become sentenced that way. They just can't bear it. You see where I'm going with this. Toxic shame has very similar side effects, very similar. So what do? How do we get rid of this toxic shame? Let's look at that for the remainder of the time we have left. Okay, the first thing that must be done to heal toxic shame is to recognize that you carry it. In order to be healed, we must come out of isolation and hiding and say, you know what, yeah, I do suffer from toxic shame. Now, coming out of isolation and hiding means maybe finding, as an example, a group of significant others that are that you're willing to trust. This is tough for shame-based people because they don't even trust themselves. How are they going to trust someone else? So shame becomes toxic shame because of premature exposure. We're exposed either unexpectedly or before we are ready to be exposed. We feel helpless and powerless. No wonder then that we fear the scrutinizing eyes of others. However, the only way out of toxic shame is to embrace the shame. We must come out of hiding. Other healthy ways of overcoming shame and guilt include, and I'll go through them quickly now because we're fast running out of time, commitment to the family, commitment to relationships. Strong family or relationship ties in which individuals are committed to one another can help overcome shame and blame. Spending time with those that matter to you is another way. Individuals who believe in the reality of the commitment like to share time with one another. They do things together, fun things, for example, projects, maybe holidays, family celebrations, going away on a trip, whatever, camping. These shared activities contribute to a sense of belonging, you see, which people with toxic shame don't have a sense of belonging. Practicing good communication is another way to come out of toxic shame. Strong families or those in healthy relationship have members who are good listeners and skilled at expressing their thoughts, desires, and feelings. Expressing appreciation is another must. It is important to be able to express one's appreciation, one's affection and encouragement within any relationship, as well as to be sincere and be able to build up another emotionally. Even when conflict arises, individuals can still express positive things to each other. Parents should ideally model this behavior for their children. Another way is to name and return shame. In other words, recognize that at certain times what you feel is toxic shame and name it as such. Understand that you inherited toxic shame from others who dumped their own shame onto you. You were not born with it. Next, mentally refuse to carry that load any longer. That is, imagine giving the shame back, as in handing back an unopened box to the person who shamed you. Avoiding negative triggers. When the ego is still fragile, my friends, it is necessary to avoid or to leave behind triggers, including people who have a shaming effect on us. Replacing them even with new acquaintances, new friends, new work settings, new places to go, etc., etc. All right, my friends, in conclusion, balancing self-expression with healthy boundaries aids a person on the path to peace, as a renewed sense of ego strength helps recover the once uncorrupted self with a big S. Feeding the positives, in other words, that is, the healthy aspects of yourself, of oneself, aids in the converse attrition of the negative self-image and helps a person to gain a foothold in and actualize a more true, benign reality. So consciously holding an image of the whole, healthy you, kindles the spark that restores the spirit, like oxygen to a dying plant, like water to a dying plant, that can feed and sustain a person through the changing weather patterns up the steep mountain to lasting peace. All right, my friends, we've come to the end of the road for today. Tune in again next Monday at 12 o'clock, high noon, right here in 1422 medium wave of the new Pan-Hellenic Voice. I do consult as a natural medicine practitioner, using natural medicine for various therapies. Those of you who do wish to consult me, pen and paper, quick. My telephone number is 076 189 6690. I repeat, 076 189 6690. CDs of this program and past programs are available from me. Contact me if you're interested. Also, if you have a group that you would like me to give a talk to, contact me. I'll be happy to oblige, and I do those talks for free. Till next time, my friends, don't forget to listen to my Tuesday night program tomorrow night from 7 to 8 p.m. on Holistic Health, the whole hour, right here on 1422 medium wave. Till next time, then, have a good week. From me, Dr. Gabrielides, I bid thee adieu. Λοιπόν, κυρίες και κύριοι, φτάσαμε στο τέλος της εκπομπής μας και για σήμερα. Θα είμαι και πάλι μαζί σας την επόμενη Δευτέρα από τις 12 το μεσημέρι μέχρι τις 1 η ώρα το απόγευμα, εδώ στα 1422 μεσαία κύματα της Νέας Πανελλήνιας Φωνής. Όσοι από εσάς θέλετε να με συμβολευτείτε για διάφορες θεραπείες με Natural Medicine, θα σας δώσω το τηλέφωνο μου τώρα μια στιγμούλα, μολύβι και χαρτί, όποιος ενδιαφέρεται. Μπορείτε να επικοινωνήσετε μαζί μου στο τηλέφωνο 076 189 6690. Επαναλαμβάνω, 076 189 6690. Επίσης μπορώ να σας προμηθεύσω CDs αυτού του προγράμματος και όλων των προηγουμένων προγράμματών μου, όπως επίσης δίνω διαλέξεις στην αγγλική. Εάν έχετε ένα group που ενδιαφέρεται για μια τέτοια διάλεξη, μη διστάσετε να επικοινωνήσετε μαζί μου, οι διαλέξεις μου είναι εντελώς δωρεάν. Αυτά λοιπόν, αγαπητοί μου φίλοι και φίλες, κυρίες και κύριοι, από μένα, τον Δόκτωρα Παναγιώτη Γαβριηλίδη, καλή σας απόγευμα, καλή σας μέρα, καλή σας εβδομάδα και μην ξεχάσετε το πρόγραμμά μου αύριο το βράδυ εδώ στην Νέα Πανελλήνια Φωνή από τις 7 το βράδυ μέχρι τις 8, ένα πρόγραμμα που αφορά την υγεία μας. Αντίο σας.